Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Chaotic Entertainment. I'm your host, Daniel Clark, and today we'll be reviewing Tales of Iron, an indie title by United Label and Oddbug Studio. Tales of Iron is a 2D hack-and-slash/platformer/ get-the-hell-off-my-property simulator that takes place in a fantasy medieval setting. Instead of diseased English peasants rolling around in their own waste, the story revolves around a kingdom of rats who have been at war with the Frog Kingdom for generations. As someone who's had parking disputes with their neighbors before, I can relate to a game about having weird, smelly, misshapen creatures encroaching on your territory. Overall, I rather enjoyed the game, but it's not without its flaws. In order to discuss the rights and wrongs of this game, we're going to break it down by category. The game takes place in the Rat Kingdom, which I'm sure has a name, but I'll be damned if my sleep-deprived, porn-addled mind can remember it. For as long as anyone can remember, the rats have been at war with the Frog Empire from across the pond. Literally. Defeat for the rats seemed inevitable until King Rattus took the throne and purged the green-skinned menace from their borders. You play as Reggie, the son of King Rattus. Reggie is the youngest and smallest of his brothers, but is also the only one who laces his breakfast with performance-enhancing drugs. The time comes when the king has to decide who he's going to pass the crown to, Reggie or his brother Dennis. Luckily, Dennis is an overweight virgin, and Chad Prince Reggie rightfully claims his place as Chad King of the Ratfolk through gentle diplomacy. Immediately after this, the king is assassinated, and you get your cheeks absolutely clapped. Battered and broken, you drag yourself to your feet, take your castle back from the Green Menace, and go on an epic adventure to rebuild your kingdom and rid yourselves of the frogs once and for all. The story of the game is fun, but not terribly deep. Ideas and objectives are conveyed through one of two sources. Geralt of Rivia.
All the prince had ever wanted was to prove worthy of his father's crown. He might be the smallest brother, but if he was prepared, he thought he had some small chance.
And strange musical squeaks accompanied by the drawings I made as a kid that never made it onto the fridge. Doug Cockle, as always, does an amazing job in this game. As the only real voice actor in the game, his lines blend perfectly with the atmosphere. The other voices, or lack thereof, range from cute to absolutely obnoxious. In fact, I was literally writing in my notes that I hope King Rattus dies just so I don't have to hear this ever again. I hadn't finished writing the sentence down when the game decided to grant my wish. Thanks, developers. Overall, the story is solid, but it does leave a bit to be desired. There are a few questions that are raised that never really seem to get answered or go anywhere. Why are there undead in the crypts? Did the king know? And if so, why did he hide it? Why are the frogs so aggressive to the rats? Who the hell is leaving these free crates of ammo and health lying around, and where do I get in line to suck their dick? It just feels like the game is either missing some story content, or perhaps it'll be added down the line in some sort of DLC. Personally, I'd love to see a couple of animated little shorts that dive deeper into the lore. But, all in all, it's a good story, it does its job, and it's told quite well. As for the gameplay, the controls for Tales of Iron are tight and extremely responsive, which is great because this is not the type of game where you win by just mashing buttons. The game is very combat focused, with a very minor emphasis on platforming. Like, very minor. You have different weapon types that all function in different ways. These weapons can be broken down into three major categories: one-handed, two-handed, and ranged. For melee options, you have swords, spears, axes, and hammers, while your ranged options are bows, crossbows, and firearms. The combat styles for each of the melee weapons can be a bit nuanced and offer a variety of ways to fight, while the only correct way to use the ranged weapons is to pick up a gun and never look back. You can find these around the map, on the corpses of enemies, or buy the schematics for them from the various shops in the game. The three main currencies are gold, iron, and bug bits. Items primarily cost metal and bits, which you get from killing enemies. These two currencies can be exchanged outside the first shop in case you need more of one type of currency. You won't be doing that because you'll be committing so much murder that you won't need to do any exchanging. You'll be so overloaded with these things that you'll never want for them. The items in the store are sometimes quest items or schematics. They also sell ammo or other useful items for combat. You won't be buying those either because you can find all that stuff for free if you walk 30 feet. Along with your weapons, you're packing sweet, delicious bug juice to heal you and poison to do bonus damage to your enemies. Speaking of enemies, the foes you'll fight come in a small number of categories: frogs and lizards, insects, the undead, and most terrifying of all, Eastern Europeans. Frogs are either nimble and springy or monstrous and slow. Bugs either fly around just out of melee range or they charge you face first. The undead throw themselves at you with absolutely no self-preservation. The moles fight, well, a lot like you, actually. Often you can get a pretty quick preview of what kind of enemies you'll be fighting just by paying attention to the environments around you. The game's environments have a lot of dreary browns and grays, but there are several parts where you'll see big flashes of color be added to the various stages and rooms. The game's cutesy art style in the beginning does not prepare you for how grim and gritty much of the game will actually be. Overall, the visuals are very solid and the backgrounds are extremely interesting to look at. But you know what helps great visuals? An absolute banger of a soundtrack. I don't think there's a single song in this game that doesn't fucking slap. The fact that I can't buy this game's soundtrack is an absolute shame. Each environment has a fitting song or ambient background with it that pairs wonderfully. Boss fights are especially satisfying with the intense musical scores that accompany them. Enemies have a variety of builds and attacks that are countered only by blocking, dodging, or counterattacking with a two-handed weapon. Normal attacks can be countered with any of these, while special attacks can only be countered by a specific ability. The prompt for this is a red flash for dodging, a red circle for dodging harder, a yellow flash for blocking, and a white flash for blocking but at a distance. It can take a moment to get used to this system, but you better get used to it in a hurry because holy hell, you are fragile. Even in the heaviest armor in the game, you are still a small rat. You're squishy and made of organs, so getting your ribcage pounded in with a club will hurt. A few hits is all it takes to kill poor Reggie. Luckily, you can raise your max health in the game by finding recipes and ingredients for your chef brother. You can put on heavier and heavier suits of armor to reduce damage, but these don't really do much and they kind of only bog you down. Your best bet for survival is to get good at reading your opponents and figuring out how best to counter their moves. The boss fights range from challenging to extremely difficult. The combat against these enemies can feel a bit like a learning experience. Every time they kick your teeth in, you learn a bit more about what their attacks do and how best to manage them. I died several times to the bosses, but never once did it feel like it was unfair or that I was cheated. Every time I lost, I didn't feel discouraged. I felt like I had to get back up and show the boss that my hentai folder was bigger than his. Some of the fights are so intense that your brain will just switch off and begin to operate on pure reflex and muscle memory. The final boss fight was so hardcore that I hurt my hand from how fast I was slamming the buttons on my controller. I still can't do any super strenuous tasks with my right hand. That was a week ago, but goddamn was it worth it. I felt like an absolute champion when I beat that boss, went home, and took my throne. Bring me my bug juice, my crown, and my Astolfo body pillow because the king is back and victorious. So, does that mean the gameplay is flawless? No. No, there are a couple of real problems with the game. None of them center around the combat or the mechanics of the game. They're all related to the actual adventure. The story quests are all great, and the side quests are fairly quick and simple. What isn't great is that you'll have a series of quests in the beginning to go collect gold to repair your castle. Nearly all of these quests have you going into the same portions of the sewer and fighting mobs of the same types of enemies several times. Additionally, some of the dialogue leading to the encounters can get extremely repetitive, with NPCs telling you the exact same thing 2 or 3 times on your way to kill something. Likewise, you'll have to fight in the arena inside the Bolshevik Republic. This wouldn't be an issue except you're doing it to farm gold and have to fight in the same spot 3 times to get enough materials. These quests are vital and have no workarounds. They don't really add much to the plot or the game itself. They mostly feel like padding to make the game last longer. I finished this game in a little under 7 hours, but that was with me dying repeatedly and scouring through every nook and cranny of the map to find hidden items. Not the longest game in the world, but other than the filler quests, I never felt bored during my playtime. You'll rarely ever farm or grind for resources, meaning you'll always be hunting down objectives for your quests. Tales of Iron will cost you about $25 on Steam. Considering how small the team is, how polished the graphics, sound, and environments are, and how great the combat feels, I'd say it's worth the price tag. It's currently sitting at an 89% positive review score on Steam, and if they just gutted the filler content or made it a little better, I could easily see it jumping up to a 95. Buy this game, download it, eat a bunch of bugs, and commit war crimes against your weird green neighbors. Tales of Iron gets a positive review from me, and I hope anyone watching this will either play it or at least watch someone else try it. Thank you all so much for watching. This has been Chaotic Entertainment. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and if you did, remember to subscribe and leave a like down below. I'll see you all next time.